Hey, Kevin. Welcome. John, I don't think I've heard audio from you. Is it working? Here's Andrea. Maybe not. There we go. Hey, John.
Hey.
Just checking. Voice check.
I have audio, no camera.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Andrea. How you doing? Oh, look at you got your Arlington branding on. Awesome. Look at that. I love it. As I'm obligated to say, Andrea, please be safe and while you're in transit.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Good. Good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. And Alexis, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was hoping it was okay if I could just sit in.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, how long have you been in Arlington, Alexis?
About 5 years now, I would say.
Ah,
welcome. I'm from Fairfax County originally.
Oh, well, welcome to Arlington. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Great place to be.
We think so. Hey, Kevin, number 2. And it's really funny. We have 2 Michaels, we have 2 Kevins, we have 2 Johns. It's like to keep them all on track.
That's the best example of data standards we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's John and Lauren, I think. Hey, John, how you doing? Hey, Jackie, how are you?
Doing well.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, I think we have enough to start, and it's after the top of the hour. So why don't I, if you can start I see you've started the recording and the thank you, Angela. Appreciate it. All right, meeting called to order. Is there any public comment before we move to the agenda? No, hearing no public comment. I think Takis will join us later. I don't see him on the list yet here, so we'll move down to my apologies. I'm automatically thinking critical infrastructure. It's actually critical improvement plan, so apologies. It's critical improvement plan. There were some good dialogue back and forth. Andrea, Gary had some good comments. He'll join us soon. And I know Takis was particularly interested in feedback on that. So I'll open the floor. Comments on the CIP.
Mary, just a quick one for me. It's actually capital improvement, the accounting.
Oh, yes. Yes. See, I'm just, yes.
Operating. And I think this is a great effort, and I haven't had time to do it yet, so I will.
Okay.
Is the material you got the only material available, or is there something with numbers on it?
No, I think I think this is it. Yes, capital. Yes, it is capital improvement. I think next week, Frank, is this right? Next week is when there's a public meeting.
Right. There's a work session, I believe, on the technology proposal, and then I believe there's the open hearing. I think it may be at 3 o'clock next Tuesday.
The hearing is June 28th at 7, and the work sessions are before that.
Right. I think the work session's at 3. I think the open meeting's at 7.
Okay. Yeah. And Takis was asking if there are some comments that we could provide to him. So if there are, I saw some good conversation prior to meeting. Gary, you had some comments, I think, in response to Andrea's comments. So anything we want to make sure we have that we're providing to Takis would be helpful. Do you want to, John, you have a comment, and then Gary, I'll go to you if you want to add some, just highlight some of the things you were saying. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was very happy to see the cloud transition and migration being funded. It indicated that that was a new program for this CIP, and I know that there's been discussion of it in the past. It also made reference of the county's cloud smart strategy, and I haven't been able to find the cloud start strategy, and I don't believe we've been briefed on it. So I was wondering if we could ask Richard to organize a briefing on the cloud start smart strategy. It's kind of hard to provide comment on the resource allocation in the capital improvement plan if we don't understand the strategy that's driving it. But I do think the cloud transition is incredibly important for the county, so I want to support it. I just prefer if we had a little bit more information on it.
Richard, that's possible, I would imagine.
Yes, just send me a set of questions or the type of information you're looking for, and I'll find the right person to brief.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other, Gary, did you want to make a comment? And Andrea, if you are able, I don't want to, if you're able to
I was
chat.
interested in hearing what Gary had to say. I was at work, so I didn't get to get his comments if he made any.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Gary, you want to you want to share your comments since not everybody was able to read what you put.
Sure. Just a nutshell version. I did notice that there was no mention of the radio broadcast component of emergency communications. And this is where our local radio station, WERA, fits into the picture. My understanding from my time at WERA and AIM was that there was already some informal, perhaps, agreement between the county and WERA such that if the need arose during emergency situations, that the county was very interested in making use of the facilities at WERA and its broadcast signal to help promulgate information that might not otherwise get to the citizenry, particularly if there might be some kind of failures in either cellular or other types of public safety communications. So that raises the question, if this is a resource that the county may be interested in using in exigent circumstances, then it also is important that some consideration be given in the CIP plan to matters such as emergency backup power, accessibility, hardening the links from the studio location to the transmitter and antenna, which, by the way, not everyone knows this, but the WERA transmitter and antenna are located at the county government building as well. So not only would you want to make sure you have hardened links for the audio feed from the current studio to the transmitter, but if the county were in a situation where they wanted to make use of that facility, they may want to consider having some kind of capability within the government building to get access to the transmitter, to get a signal out as well. All of this involves capital expenditures, whether it's for backup equipment, auxiliary or ancillary equipment to get access to the studio facilities, periodic testing to make sure that they have the infrastructure in place, because so many times in my days when I was at the FCC, you heard of instances, for example, during hurricanes, cell towers fail, and when the commission would inquire, say, what happened with your backup power supplies? They said, well, we didn't test them for 3 years or 6 months ago. So testing, having the equipment, reliability, resiliency. My comments were to simply, with that framework, highlight that some thought should be given to that. That would also include, I think, obviously, having some dialogue with the AIM folks in WERA to coordinate the effort.
Right. Thanks, Gary. Yeah. And Frank, you had a comment, and then Jackie.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Gary for bringing that up. It is a topic that we've dealt with in the past, and actually there is a formal memorandum of understanding between the county and AIM on the use of WERA in emergency situations. I think we did finally receive it. I mean, it's a few years ago now, I think, Mary, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that's probably one of those things that if if it can, I mean, I'm not sure if that should be made public or not. That may be, that's something that may not, be a good idea to put on the website. I don't know, but that's something. But we've received it at some point. To our knowledge, there's been no changes, and I don't know if Jack or Richard can let us know if there's any changes to that. But
And do you feel that the CIP has enough in it to support all the items that Gary was mentioning? I guess that's the key question. Jack or Richard, do you have any light to shed on that?
I do not have anything on that specific topic because on our side of the house, that would fall into emergency management, not into IT. So more a question, you can pose it in writing, but also more a question for the ITAC group and their relationship with Department of Public Safety and Emergency Communications.
And perfect timing. Welcome, Sharon. The chair of VPAC. Thank you, Sharon. We were just discussing in emergencies about WERA, and you came on just then. So well done. Perfect entrance.
Very good. I missed the question, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. The basically we'll get back to you, but the question that Gary was raising was for resiliency purposes as we're looking at the CIP, is there enough support there given the county's reliance on WERA? So, and Richard was saying really it's not in the DTS lane, but it's in the emergency lane. So we'll come back to you, hold steady, and Jackie's up next.
Great, thanks.
Just to follow up, Mary, if I could, little history on this. It occupied a critical link. We found during 9/11 that there's a thirst for information as regards what happened in Arlington. And that's the reason there was a focus on WERA providing that radio contact information. You can turn on CNN.
Oh, don't I hear Joe?
No, this is Jack.
Oh, it's Jack.
It's Jack.
With your voice. Hi,
yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying, this is it certainly has prevalence, Gary, what you're saying. It's a very important. We put that MOU in place for that reason. The challenge has been, frankly, you had a great radio broadcast hour in the morning, news hour. I can't think of, I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name who did it, but he was fantastic. And he really facilitated the communication of information and such. There's been a change. And I think what's happened, in order to make any of these emergency management things work, there has to be practice, resiliency. In other words, it's not, you just can't wait to the event and then say, okay, let's turn it on and see if it works. And to be frank, I don't think there's been that since the change in the broadcast schedule over there. And I think that's something that I think we ought to make an effort to rekindle it, because again, there's always going to be an opportunity where you don't have communications, and having a radio network like that can reach many people. And frankly, I used to enjoy, and I can't think of the gentleman's name. Do you remember him, Gary? Who was the gentleman that was running that news hour in the morning at WRA?
Yes, it was Yulee. He did Arlington in the morning.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I would listen to him.
Yeah, it was a great show. It was a live show, and it was real authentic, and he had a lot of interactions.
Yeah, and we would talk about a lot of things over that station to reach the public. So we missed that. But I think if there's a message, and Richard's coordinator linked to the WRA AIM team over there, I think we should revisit that. I know Aaron Miller's in a new role, as you know now. He's moved up now
as deputy.
Yeah, but Will Flagler, I know, would be very interested in having that. And the connection's there. It's just a matter of have periodic tests and trying it out and making sure it works. Bell rings, and a bell will ring at any point in time. And who do we go to? Who's the go person we go to? And I'm concerned, frankly, that we don't have that right now. So I think we have to have that developed and practiced.
Okay. Thanks, Jack. And move from Jack to Jackie.
Yes. So what I was going to say was, we also had a FCC waiver approval to boost signal on an AM station for quite a while. I don't know if that has run out. I haven't heard anything about it, but I think we should ask that question at the same time. 1700, it was AM 1700, and that one we did promote quite a bit. I mean, it was on magnetic cards that we handed out for people's fridges and all sorts of things, and it did do periodic testing, but we did have to get the FCC. It was emergency management that got the FCC approval to boost the signal under as an information channel during emergencies. So let's ask both of those questions.
Okay. All right. So the boost as well. Great. Thank you. Bill, you're next.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Question for Jack. And it's basically this. How do the various CIP items, both individually and in totality, relate, or how can we tell how they relate or match to DTS workforce and staffing levels and the talent required to manage all these various projects? Is there a way to see that it's perfectly in sync, or is there a shortfall? Does this need to be addressed, or how does the casual observer kind of make that association between the work and the staff to carry out the work?
Jack?
Here? Sorry, I'm mute.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the things we put into the CIP are based upon where we see the technology world shifting to and transitioning. And there was a study done just recently by National Association of Counties and in combination with National Association of Cities, looking at asking CIOs and IT leaders across the country, what do they see as the most prevalent change ahead? And what it was this, is about 60% of them said they see the technology landscape is changing under us, right in front of our eyes, and where we're going. What we did before is changing, and we have to recognize that. Now, how do we do that with the money we have and the resources we have? So some basic things are happening. We would build. That was what an IT shop did, right? Build, and now we recognize we probably have to buy more than we build. We used to own, because that's what we did. So we owned data centers, we owned server farms, and we owned the applications. And now we're realizing that probably we need to license and use them as needed, and recognize that, it's better to do that as an economic model than what we've been doing. And lastly, we looked at it from the perspective of we manage everything. We could manage it best, right? Now we're recognizing that there are folks out there who can do a better job of managing networks and servers and services than we can. And as we move to a world where software is as a service, as they call it, it abstracts the level of support we need to provide as a county and devoting that to somebody else to provide. Now, it involves a level of trust in that the people are going to have the maturity to make that happen. And as I listened a few minutes ago to John Burke, I believe it was John Burke was talking about it, cloud is very mature now, and it's the way of the future. So what you see in the CIP is really rationalizing our technology investments in terms of what we see the future and what's going to happen. And it's also looking for, there are a number of, one thing that's true is everybody says there are a number of emerging trends taking place that could be very disruptive in terms of technology. The cloud's one, which is an enabler, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, Internet of as I said, Internet of Things, machine learning.
Machine learning.
Quantum computing. 2 years ago, quantum computing was just an aspiration. And now it's going to happen. I mean, the Biden administration is putting money into it big time. And, they're working instead of bits, we're talking about qubits. Well, you can do things amazingly fast. That's going to have amazing impact on the financial industry and the health industry and such, but it's going to have the same impact on government. And so what we try to do with the CIP is frankly guess. As I talked to the manager about this, anybody who thinks that we can predict technology in a plan for 10 years from now needs to be putting the money other places. And that's where I am on this. So what we're doing is, if you look at the CIP, we're accommodating the refreshment as we had of our servers and networks and data centers and such in the same mindset we did, say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But we have this insight that's going to change. And what I'm going to be telling the board is just that, is that there's a change coming. And they're predicting, we talked about Moore's Law, then we went to Nevin's Law. Now we're at a point where we're saying that the exponential growth is taking place, and you're going to see 10 years of technology growth in the next 18 to 24 months. And people say, when I say that, they say, oh, you're crazy. I think it bears listening to, and we need to understand what that means. So saying all that, back to the question was asked, what do we do about resources? We're going to have to understand what resources we need. I mean, you just can't buy things and expect them to run on their own. You got to have the necessary resources to support them. So the idea of capitalizing resources out of the investments we're proposing is something that we understand has to be done. Do we have an answer yet? No. Do we have a roadmap that can say we're going to need this much now, tomorrow? But no. But we do know that it's happening, and it's happening at a rapid pace. And there's two ways of doing this. Is that you can turn around and say, let's get everything in place before we move forward. But as we're doing that, things are going out the door. And we're refreshing major systems. And do we continue to do what we've been doing it? Or do we step back and say, we're going to focus on those that are leaving the bond now and make sure they're done in a cloud-centric way, and they're done in a sense that we understand what it means? Because the model's changing. You're not just investing in capital investments. You're really investing in the use of processes that are going to require consumption of resources, and the costs are going to fluctuate. So you've got to control that. So there's got to be a sort of a center of excellence that's monitoring and managing this as we go forward. So you asked a simple question, and I gave you a long answer, but no, it's a challenge. It's a challenge my successors are going to have to face going forward. The county's going to have to face.
Thank you.
Jack. Any, Frank, is that an old hand or a new hand?
That's a new hand. I just wanted to
Okay.
circle back to Jackie's point about the AM Travelers Information Station on 1700. Unfortunately, it's my understanding that was shut down. Isn't that right, Jack?
Yeah, I think you're right, Frank. I can't validate that right now, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I think you had reported that at one point.
Yeah, I believe you're right. Yep.
I know it's tough. AM, over 100-year-old technology, but it does work. It was I thought it was a nice low-cost solution. So it's unfortunate that that it was turned off. But I don't know if what the option is for getting at that, because there actually have been some changes in the regulations at the FCC on the content that can go on those travelers information stations. Actually, a rulemaking that my old law firm was behind. So,
that's one of the things. We had a meeting that bringing back history, Frank. I'm forgetting the history here, but Martha Moore. I don't know if she's still on the line today. Martha on?
She's not on at the moment, Jack, but she's still on the commission.
Do you remember Martha bringing up the whole subject of retirement of the fiber?
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Right, the copper.
Yes, I do.
The copper.
The copper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, not too long ago, we were informed by the FCC that come August of 2022, they're going to stop all POTS lines, and it goes back to the whole of going to fiber. And so those POTS lines not only handle fax machines, right, but they also handle the phone in the elevator you're going up in. We have POTS lines that are ring down lines to the police fire stations. So if everything else fails, we go to that. So we raise all kinds of concern because from the Council of Government's perspective, because this has a major impact on the whole region. We've been fortunate that we've been migrating many of our POTS lines, but there are these things that when they happen and somebody retires a technology, we tend to look at it for one reason, but the impact is significant.
The ripple of plain old telephone service, right?
So a shout out to Martha Moore for picking that up, 4 years ago? 5
Yes.
years ago?
I think it was even. Yeah, I think it was more. I think it was back when we had the DeRay show, which is a long time ago.
That could have been 2012.
I think it was. I think that was the big concern. Power was out for a lot of people for a long time, and just a footnote. My ONT for my FiOS service, which is basically the box in the house that terminates the fiber feed. My internet went down a couple weeks ago, and I was on Verizon. It was all. It was all artificial intelligence is chat bots. It was, I mean, it was, you know, not the greatest customer service. You should like that, Kevin Broadhurst. It was that, but ultimately I had to show them a picture of my current ONT, and they said, "Oh, we'll send somebody out to." Basically, the ONT was dead, and the new one doesn't have a battery backup. I asked the tech, and he said, "No, we don't do that anymore." So,
Hey, Frank, I have to tell you that thanks to Tom Whipple, I was the second house in Arlington that got Fios because he had to get the first one. I got the second one.
Right.
And mine went dead this week as well.
Is that? I guess
excellent.
We're at the end of service on this.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I had
looked at that and says, "Where'd you get this?"
Yeah, and the outside box that I had a bush that grew up all around. I had to trim that all the way back so the tech could get in there. So.
Poor Louise is listening to this. I know, Louise. We're not criticizing. We're just no.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I still actually they didn't take down the copper when they buried the fiber to my house. I still have copper, but it's dead, you know, dead as could be. He said, "Oh, I could take that down next time I have a bucket truck in the neighborhood. Maybe I should leave it on."
Louise, the staff were perfect. They were so receptive. So I want you to know that.
Yeah. Oh, there you go, Louise. That's a
good. Oh, Louise, sorry about that.
That's right. And Sharon, thank you Sharon agrees 1700 is no longer. So thank you for that update. And Mike, I think you are next.
Yeah, I was hoping to just kind of nail down. I believe Takis is asking us to give our thoughts on this very quickly, and the meetings are coming up very quickly. I like John's suggestion that we get a briefing, but if a briefing happens a month from now, it's not going to be particularly useful in responding to Takis. And so is there a document that lays out the cloud smart strategy that one could read as opposed to waiting for a in-person briefing? Number one. And number two is I'm operating off a general knowledge of capital versus operating budgeting, but I'm sure it's kind of peculiar in all places. And so if there's a background document about why something ends up in capital versus something ends up in operating, and there's a piece in the current description that talks about one of the consequences of cloud is you'll be requiring less capital in the future and more operating, and presumably the savings from the less capital exceed the increases in the more operating, but something that just does Arlington budgeting 101 between operating budgets and capital budgets would be useful to make appropriate comments on the capital piece that's before us now.
Richard, is that available?
I don't know what the status is of the cloud document, so ask that question or include that in your list of questions. As far as operational versus capital, it's very much in the heads of our accountants, and there are so many quote unquote "it depends" scenarios that it is not conducted to a single document. I'll give you the general overview in two or 3 minutes here. Classically, if it is anything related to labor, consumable materials like batteries, ongoing services to keep the lights on, all of that is operational expense. The capital expense on our side is the actual equipment, the items with serial numbers, the items that we depreciate over time, and the items that we expect to have long, useful lives. So we follow the general accepted accounting principles there. Where we have some additional area to capitalize is that labor associated with a project can be included in the capitalization of that project. So you will see in the CIP some capitalized labor associated with a project, and that's our way for planning for effectively staff augmentation to implement large equipment changes. And so those are the characterizations. And yes, you have made a fair statement in that our expectation is as we shift to cloud services, we spend more in operational money and less in capital because we time slice that equipment. We pay for it as a service, not as an investment in equipment. And DMF is on board with us as far as that being the future of how these pieces of software will be purchased, consumed, and and the need to have less capital behind because we just won't be able to buy these things. There are two parts to the argument. One is, yes, you expect to save money, but two is that the industry is not allowing us a choice. In some places, we must shift to a cloud subscription model, and we have no choice. So independent of whether it saves us money or not, it's the future for many of these services. They have all figured out that subscriptions are the future, and we kind of have to go along with it.
And I'll just throw one last comment in. I think it is a best practice that as people are doing their operating budget, they realize that achieving savings within their operating budget and redeploying it to their next object of interest is an easier process in the bureaucracy than getting capital. And so I would suggest that in the regular budget formulation process, you give people some kind of bogey, like we know cloud should save a little money. So show us a budget that gets everything done that got done last year, but saves 10%, and then show us where you want to reinvest that 10%. And maybe in the future, there won't even be much of a capital budget, not because we're avoiding it, but because the nature of things has moved into more of an operational realm that you do with a credit card.
Yeah.
And Sharon is also, thanks Sharon, she's put in the chat, for those of you who might have missed it, the program's budget finance. That might be a good helpful link as well, Mike. So, and for the rest.
Okay,
okay.
Thanks.
And yeah, thank you, Sharon. Any other comments about the capital improvement plan for now? Is that anything else you want to add?
Just Mary, to piggyback on Mike's comment about schedule, I think it'd be critical to get everybody's observations and comments synthesized into one document before the county board work session. So just for the rest of the commissioners, if we could get any additional comments or thoughts in writing sent to everybody, and then we can pull it together and send it to Takas before the county board work session. So that
right,
I think he can have it.
Right, I think he'd find that helpful. Right. All right, let's move to legislative update, Frank.
Yes, let's see. There has been some action. Let's see. Actually, back to one of our favorite topics, the data privacy. The discussion draft of the bipartisan data privacy has been circulated, which would allow consumers to turn off targeted ads online. Leaders of both parties have signed on to this draft, except the Senate Commerce Chair, Maria Cantwell from Washington State. She is in favor of what she views as a stronger federal law. So there, I think, have been further discussions. So they're hopefully moving towards an agreement there, but nothing imminent at this point. The FCC has released its Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, which I've talked about, Consumer Outreach Toolkit, which includes a host of resources for government partners to get the word out about the $30 monthly discount that both, I think, Verizon and Comcast have said that they would provide service for that amount to people who meet the affordability criteria. Senator Elizabeth Warren has introduced broad legislation to ban the sale of location and health data. The bill would bar data brokers from selling or transferring location and health data. And Verizon's new Mobile Plus Home discounts drops its cheapest home internet plan to $25 a month. So we're seeing a lot of activity on the broadband, both wired and wireless front. Verizon completed a 5G data session using Citizens Broadband Radio Service, CBRS, General Authorized Access frequency, which is the unlicensed spectrum. And Verizon has also acquired CBRS Priority Access, which is PAL spectrum, which is the licensed spectrum within the CBRS. That's the 3.5 gigahertz. Anyhow, prior use of CBRS was for LTE, so this is a first as far as making use of CBRS for 5G, which is, I think, an important development there. President Biden signed a bill to authorize the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to assist state and local governments in bolstering their cyber defenses by providing access to digital tools and services. And the president also signed a bill that establishes a program allowing cybersecurity experts to rotate through various federal agencies and to enhance their expertise. So that's what I've got this month.
All right. And I think Mike had a question for you, Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank, I'm wondering if you happen to know the details in the federal data privacy thing as regards what I think is called supremacy. Like, will the federal law preclude stricter state or local laws? And or does it include any kind of grandfathering that says if you've already taken action, like we just recommended the board to do, what effect would this federal legislation have on those actions?
I don't know for sure. I think typically I think there is a push for federal preemption on this, just so there's not a patchwork of 50 state laws or thousands of municipal laws. So I think typically that's part of the reason to get everybody to the table. So.
I got you, and thanks for that, Frank. And I'll try to look.
But I'll see if I can find anything out on that.
Yeah, and to me the most important combination would be if there is that sort of preemption and a grandfathering, that would say let's get moving.
Right.
An urgency.
Yeah, and I believe Connecticut now is the 5th state that has just adopted a state data privacy law. So there is growing push among states and localities to address this. So I think that may provide impetus for a federal regime.
Okay. All right, great. So you'll loop back.
Yeah,
Frank, so
if I can find anything out on that.
That's great. That's great. All right, we'll move now to lessons learned from the Safety Innovation Zone. John, you want to walk us through that?
So I sent out the document. Essentially, we are a little over the original deadline for the pilot to be completed. There's a staff level report. I don't know the extent to which we're going to be able to get a briefing on the staff report. I hadn't heard back, or if I have, it's lost in my inbox. And so I went ahead and I drafted with some feedback from Sharon, the chair of the ITAC Commission, a series of lessons learned and associated policy recommendations that have a nexus to the pilot project. So I think what I'd like is just hear from folks if they have questions about any of the lessons learned or recommendations, if you feel that there's anything missing, mischaracterized, any of that. So I'll just kind of open the floor to hands.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I know I sent out, Sharon, thanks for your comments. I sent out the updated version to you all with Sharon, because it would be a joint letter, obviously, from both commissions. So there are some shifts, a few changes. And Sharon, if you want to comment before we open it up to the floor, do you have any addition?
I think the comments speak to themselves. Sorry, I think that there are a couple things that would be helpful for you to know, in that I think it's important that any of these types of future projects do balance public safety and the needs for that from a community safety perspective with things such as civil liberties, because technology isn't perfect and it still has bias. And I think it's important, not to say that this project in particular has issues that could impact civil liberties, but I do think that it's important that we consider those types of impacts on with these types of technology. I also think it's important on the higher level not to become too reliant on technology if emergencies occur, because in a true emergency, it may be that the technical solution may not be available, and we need to use lower level, I guess is the way to say it, solutions. And then the last thing I want to make sure folks know, besides what's in the letter, or the updated letter, is that Aaron Miller has been appointed acting deputy county manager. And what we were told is that he is now over both public safety and IT. And I don't know how that ties into DTS, but it may or may not, because that's all we've been given so far as his title, may or may not indicate that there could be other types of projects, such as what's happening in the safety and innovation zone and at National Landing in the future. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. And I think, John, my understanding of you crafting this, really the purpose from you and Sharon was that it really was just an opportunity to make sure and capture the lessons learned from both your viewpoints, and then be able to provide the board an understanding of some of the framework and some things to consider moving forward. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. We wanted to be able to give concrete policy recommendations about actions that the board could take that we think would improve future pilots. And I think it's critical that, sometimes in technology, most probably preaching to the choir here, you learn faster by doing a thing than by analyzing a thing or planning a thing.
True.
Right. And so pilots are good to do that, but when you do that, you're removing a lot of your process checks. You're removing a lot of the risk controls that you would have on a project where you know what you're doing, you know how to execute against it, you come up with a plan, you do the planning activity up front, right? And so those risks need to be bounded effectively and controlled effectively so that the learning happens, but you don't have unanticipated consequences from other risks. And so risk really is the important consideration when doing a pilot, and treating pilots as risky in different ways than your normal type of project, I think, is really important.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think Mike and then Phil.
John, I think this is a solid piece of work, and I think the context is very important to me. Am I correct that because we were unable to review a draft of the report that's being written to send to the board, we are on our own motion making a set of observations and recommendations because we know we're being left out of the actual report? Is that true?
I don't know that that's how I'd characterize it. I'd say that their timeline is different for reasons of institutional prerogative, which I think are perfectly valid. And so what I've done is I took the same recommendations that I had provided to be included in the staff report. The content of the report is really project focused and focused on the pilot itself. And so I had made some recommendations. We've made some recommendations about privacy focused recommendations coming out of the governance panel, right, which we participated in. And those are actually included in this document. So it's not that we're left on our own. There's just a different kind of focus for that report, and the timeline is different. And so whether or not that moves to being a publicly available report is outside of our purview, and so there are other non-privacy recommendations, which you see up at the top, really, that I think are more important for us to be making to the board. So I've said it several times, and all bears repeating, the privacy aspects of this project, I think, are the strongest. It was some of the other aspects of this project that I'm more concerned about, specifically, the use case, right? use case that was proposed was viewed skeptically by the public from the very beginning, and I believe this commission as well. And then there was concerns about some of the project partners and not having a whole lot of transparency on Chicanu, frankly. Maybe they're great. The marketing materials look good, but there's really no publicly available information about them. And so really it's what are the use cases we're going after, and shouldn't they be use cases that are of strategic priority to the Arlington County, right? Rather than someone showing up with a solution in search of a problem. Because there's a lot of vendors out there who have solutions in search of problems. And I think if we advertise and we explicitly say, listen, we're an innovative place. We want innovation. We want to partner with the public sector or with the private sector. But here are the things we need help on. I think we'll get better pilots, we'll get better partners, and we'll get better value. And I think a comment that that Jackie made at the beginning was, the risk reward trade-off. Well, there's no excuse taking any risk whatsoever if the value proposition at the end of it doesn't make any sense for us, right?
And that makes perfect sense to me, John. Thanks for the clarification. And I would say the most fundamental question is, we're a year into this pilot. Have we moved the needle on safety? And what was the most innovative part of the pilot? Well, if we don't have quick answers to that question after a year, that suggests that the design wasn't particularly rigorous.
As you saw in the comments, and I tried to imply this rather than come out and say it, the value proposition of the use case that was proposed has proved elusive up until this point. I think it has taken longer than the project team anticipated to turn the data gleaned from these devices into a useful signal for emergency dispatch. I think they expected to be able to do that faster, and I think there's some technical reasons why it has taken longer that have been overcome, that may result in success. At least those that have been shared. I fundamentally am skeptical that it can result in success, but I'm not in it looking at it as closely as they are.
Okay. Thanks. Phil?
A couple of points. If there was a follow-on to that program baking somewhere, would we know about it? Would we have a right to know about it?
You mean a follow-on to the Safety Innovation Zone?
Yeah.
So I don't think so. That's why recommendation 1 is to specifically create an authorization for pilot type activities and define a risk assessment and use risk as the gauge for the type of pilots that need board action. And we all have opinions on what those risk levels should be and what those risk factors should be, but I think that's really for the board and the county government to define. I don't think every pilot needs to come to the board, but I think some should. And I think the board and the manager and county staff should think through how to evaluate those things. But at this point, there's, in my knowledge, no rules of the road for this type of activity. And this was kind of a one-off.
Okay.
Okay,
And there's also, you follow up, Phil?
Yeah, a little bit different. I noticed most of these recommendations are phrased something like the county should do this and the county should do that. Does the letter really intend to request that the board have a consensus and task the county manager with carrying out certain things which are laid out in the recommendation? And if that's true, should it be more explicit?
I think, yes, the intention is that the board would take an action to implement some of these things. What the form of that action should be, whether it's informal or whether it's formal, I'll leave to their discretion. But, if other people feel differently, I'm happy to make adjustments.
Jackie?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a it's a good letter. I like it. I think it was actually a lot, I don't know, milder comes to mind, less pointed than I expected it would be. And maybe that's part of what you're getting at in terms of what the exact recommendation is. It's more general, I guess, than I thought. And particularly given the last draft of the report that I saw, which I think, did address things a little more pointedly. I had a couple, I did send one in writing, and then I have another one that are a little bit more pointed. I was struck from the beginning with the apparent lack of expertise by the staff on what the components of the project were, specifically the sensors. So it took us quite a long time and multiple drafts and rewrites to get something like a table or a matrix of the sensors in terms of what was their inherent capability and was it being used for that? What additional capabilities could it have by adjustment? And what capabilities, if you wanted, you would have to make an additional software, additional whatever. And this was partly because we were trying to get at, well, what if some, bad actor were to tap into it? Could they add stuff that would make it usable for other purposes? That was one of the reasons for asking. So it was definitely a security and a safety and a privacy issue, as well as an operational, what are you going to be able to get out of this? And we did learn quite a bit when we got that done. So I'm not sure what there was an important lesson there in that I would have thought they would have known that and have that written up before they even came to us. And then the question is, well, where would they have gotten that? I mean, I guess maybe I thought that would be something that would be part of the description that that would have been provided as part of the non-competitive proposal of here's, the specifications of what we plan to provide. The other thing is it definitely demonstrated how dependent our staff is. And Jack was actually mentioning this a little bit earlier with respect to other things. I think, I'm not mischaracterizing Jack, that there are a lot of areas of new expertise where we don't necessarily have in-house expertise. So we're somewhat dependent on getting that third-party expertise, which was through Mason and through the Commonwealth group, cyber group. So I think there does need to be something. I think it would be helpful to have some reference to making sure that we had an independent expertise in addition whenever we take on something like this, that is our representatives, not partnered with whoever is providing the contract and the service. That's first.
So Jackie, I think that is
point. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that is addressed by recommendation 3.1. You're never going to have all the smart people in the world who work under your roof, right? And what we need is those independent relationships with independent technical experts that don't have a vested economic interest in their advice to us, right? And so I think the partnership with the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative and the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus and Innovate at Mason that are the expansions of those research institutions are hugely valuable.
I guess that's where it's not as pointed as I would think it would be. And there's an example. And that is, it says, this says quite politely that that this kind of expertise will be required, and that the county should have those strategic partnerships. It doesn't say we shouldn't embark on these kinds of plans until we've established that relationship and reviewed the proposal with the outside experts. And I do think there's some danger to taking an unsolicited proposal and jumping in and then getting the expertise. I guess that's partly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess the pointed versus not pointed is more of a stylistic thing from my perspective.
Okay, I'm not feeling adversarial today, so it's okay with me. The second point.
But I do intend, and maybe it's not as clear or explicit, that the risk assessment portion should be thorough. And if you're thoroughly doing a risk assessment of pilots, you're going to look at your own capabilities with regards to the technologies in question. And I agree that the learning that the project team did about the capabilities of these devices during the project was a bit, I will say more than a bit, it was very concerning to me that we didn't have a good understanding of what the devices could do until after we greenlight the project. Yeah.
Yeah, John, you and I were at the beginning, we were asking the questions. I was just shocked that staff didn't have the answer to.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, to me, it was a bigger problem than the gentleness of this dialogue conveys. And maybe saying you need to have that expertise before you take on an unsolicited proposal. But that's what I'm saying is the risk, a large part of this risk assessment and the value proposition should have been done before any agreement. That's the main point I'm trying to make. And the second point is I would love to see in this, maybe we're in the section where you are talking about the NIST, using the NIST framework, a reference to the other letter that we just painstakingly completed. Because one of the reasons why in doing the NIST framework, we were not able to answer questions about the organization as a whole, but only focus on where we had the opportunity to ask multiple questions about a specific project, is because we do not have the digital policy and privacy and overarching privacy policy that we're recommending that they have. So that gap showed up very prominently in how we're able to assess this pilot or any pilot in the context of the overall. So one of our big issues was we could look at security and safety until the point at which these systems connected to other systems, which is actually potentially the most dangerous point when you begin to aggregate data together. And at that point, we had no knowledge of what the security and the privacy policies were that would apply to the integration as it went back through the chain of communications and use in other parts of the agency. So maybe the way around going through all that level of detail is to simply make a reference to the recommendation we've made and indicate that this is that our inability to do this NIST framework is exactly the kind of thing that we would like to have cured by having the overall overarching policy. So that's my second comment, because I think one of the things this process as the pilot really highlighted for us was the lack of the organizational level information.
They're both valid pieces of feedback, Jackie, and I'll take actions to incorporate both of those into the letter.
Mike?
I have two brief comments, neither of which relate to the changes in the document, but I'd like to just get them on the record. And one is, I believe in the year that this pilot has been going on, the Center for Information Technology, which is a Virginia state level entity, has created a test bed out in Stafford or Dumfries or something like that. And had that existed at the beginning of this, one of the options would have been to say, well, let's address the citizens' worries by not subjecting the citizens to the surveillance, but rather do all our technology testing at this other community that has volunteered to be such a test bed and did so with eyes open consent. I think we would have got some technical expertise to go with it, but fundamentally we would have been able to get any of the technology integration level questions that the pilot was asking by creating a test bed and learning about the technology out there without exposing anybody either for real or just in their imagination, to something that bothers their sensibilities. The other piece is, and I think this is a very difficult problem, and that is, and I'm going to use an analogy here, when we're regulating physical space in the county, we use site plans and there's all kinds of setback things and density restrictions and height restrictions. I don't even know them very well, but I know it's very easy to see whether the party that's on the other end of the agreement is staying within the constraints. Is the building as tall as we approved or is it taller? Does it come as close to the border as it does? And it's hard to fake that. It's hard to move that. When it comes to data collection and data use, we can certainly test at a moment in time, but there's a whole decade's worth of docket at the Federal Trade Commission that says the biggest risk to what I think I heard the citizens' concerns here in Arlington is not necessarily that malicious third party. It's the second party who entered an agreement with you to stay within certain constraints and then willfully broke that agreement for profit. That's the biggest risk. And I'm not sure what we can do about that, but it won't be very satisfying to citizens to say, well, on the day we started the pilot, we got them to sign this contract, and then we have no idea, whether they comply with this or not.
Yeah, Mike, I think the recommendation about explicitly advertising for the type of values we're looking for in our partners, and having more clear profiles of those partners as part of the project or pilot approval process speaks to that, because you're going to have to trust somebody, right? So let's work with people that we think share our values, I think.
And I think that's a fine step in the right direction, John. I'm going to be very skeptical and say, and they're all trustworthy until they borrow money or raise money in the public markets, and then they succumb to the quarterly profit targets, and they do things they probably wouldn't have done when it was just Serge and the other guy.
Yeah, I think their business model factors in explicitly into that evaluation of their values.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Sharon, did you have comments?
Yeah, so actually, I guess first, I don't know what your method is. Do you vote on approving a letter, or before I get to that?
Well, John will have to incorporate these changes so that people can see the new draft.
Okay.
And then there'll be an email, since we won't be meeting until, well, you all won't be meeting until August. So I assume our goal is to get this letter to the board before August. So Sharon, John, my understanding is you'll incorporate, then send it around and see if there's consensus.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd just like to request one final time that there be a final paragraph that says something like, in closing, we respectfully request that the county manager be requested to do X, Y, and Z. It's just not, it's not very clear what specific things need to be done, or any sense of urgency or even explicitness in the recommendations.
Bill, would you mind drafting that for me? I was expecting you to ask a connection to the recommendation for a countywide information technology plan.
Well, so
Which
again,
I think I was expecting you to ask for a connection to the countywide information technology plan, like you did on the privacy letter, which I would also agree with. But would you
cut and paste, Phil, is what he's saying.
Would you draft something for me? I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it impolite to ask the board to request the county manager to do something?
Not by my standards.
Just ask him.
Yeah, I think a summary paragraph at the end that says, in closing, we respectfully request the board to implement these recommendations. I think would be perfectly fine. Many of these recommendations would be easier to implement if we had a countywide strategic plan as part of the comprehensive plan to guide the implementation of these recommendations. Something along those lines, I think, would be perfectly fine.
Great. And then I guess the part that I wanted to say, once I understood what your actions were going to be because of the joint letter, I just wanted to, I know that this is Mary's last night, and I wanted to take a moment on behalf of ITAC to thank Mary and also the rest of Tech Commission, because I think this project in particular, the commissions have chosen to work together. And I think what we've shown is that the commissions can do great work and really benefit the county by using our combined expertise for the betterment of the community. And I don't think that would have happened had Mary not welcomed it with open arms. And so I just want to make sure that I thank her and the rest of the commission on behalf of ITAC. And I wish you the best as you take this forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, it certainly has been, it's been a wild ride, and you've taught me a lot about emergency preparedness. Thank you. I think Frank is the institutional memory on the team, but I think this is probably the closest we have worked with ITAC in the past, but I think this has been one of the closest relationships.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, we have worked with them in the past, but I think it is an area where it makes a lot of sense because there is a lot of intersection.
There is. And Sharon, you are the consummate finding resources for us. So thank you. I mean, I don't know if you read 24 hours a day, but I can't keep up with you. So I want to tell you, you are an amazing ability to find information throughout is notable. And it's been a pleasure. And you've also made me laugh in those moments when I wasn't prepared to laugh. So thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, so John, you will get this letter out to obviously Sharon as well, since her name is also on that letter.
Assuming there are no other comments.
I think and I appreciate everybody engaging and getting clarity about that. That's good. And I also appreciate that we're, one of the reasons we do pilots is to learn. And so I think it's helpful to get a lot of lessons learned recorded. So Thanks, John, for drafting that. You and Sharon for able to capture that so we don't lose it, because the farther away we get from it, the more foggy those experiences become. The next on our list, because it usually comes, we usually get a note that says, what are your legislative priorities, fairly quickly. So we really wanted to we've primed this pump a couple of times, and you'll notice when we review the minutes, there were a couple things that we already have down in terms of virtual meetings, and just wanted to throw it out again. If there's any other things that you all have thought about that we want to make recommendations to the board about legislative priorities, anything else that you all have thought about, so that when the email arrives that we will have it. Yeah, Mike.
Can I have permission to enter a danger zone here?
Go for it, Mike.
I would like to propose some transparency in the use of non-disclosure agreements. And sometimes I have the feeling, with no evidence, that the reason I'm not getting a response on the other side of a dialogue is because the person has been constrained in their public duties, a legally enforceable non-disclosure agreement. And the most frustrating part about that is I, of course, don't get to know whether there is one or there isn't. But as we talk about pilots and distortion and competition, I believe non-disclosure agreements are an area that merits policy. I'm not saying every single one of them has to be transparent. I do understand oftentimes technology companies have patents pending and other proprietary information. But I'm just sort of sick to my stomach about the possibility that a private venture capital funded company could get one of my elected officials, or somebody who's being paid with my tax dollars, to have to be quiet and, for example, never say the word surveillance out loud. So my suggestion would be, let's see if we can frame a legislative policy that says we're concerned about how to share with the public the necessity of non-disclosure agreements, and we prefer to restrict them to matters that have patents pending or other genuinely transactable intellectual property, not just, I like the aura of innovation, so I make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then it interferes with your public duties.
Okay.
San Diego has banned them completely, and other communities require a transparency that there is such an agreement. Of course, it's not what the content of the agreement is, but for example, it might be Mike Carlton is on the Information Technology Advisory Commission for Arlington. He has signed non-disclosure agreements with the following corporate interests.
Mm-hmm. Right. Declaration of.
Yeah.
I've had to do many of those in my other, yes. Phil.
Yes, getting back to the specific priorities, I'm interested in the broadband authority that Tim discussed at length a meeting or two past. I had the impression that if the county board took certain action to implement this, we would receive a lot of federal money.
Yes, he did.
Is there anything with regard to Richmond that's an obstacle, or is it all on our board to take the action that would open the floodgates to all this federal money?
Frank, I will defer to you on that question.
The roadblocks are taken away if the county does establish a broadband authority. Then I think that is authorized under state law, and then I don't think it's a slam dunk that the floodgates open on the money, but the money is being sent around. There is this tension between filling in rural holes in coverage and trying to provide additional service in urbanized area where affordability is an issue or other gaps. So While there was some language coming out and some pushback going on between whether fiber can be the preferred methodology or whether it should be technology agnostic, and whether wireless can also be used to provide broadband in areas. But yes, I think the state issue goes away if there's a broadband authority, but if not, if the county tries to do it on its own without the broadband authority, then there would be obstacles.
So bottom line, is there a legislative priority in there or not, would you say, Frank?
Given that there's this existing framework, establishing a broadband authority, I would say it would be pretty, especially given the change in administration in Richmond and changes in the legislature, I would say it'd be pretty tough ask to get the county to have that authority when there's an existing framework that permits it to go forward using a separate entity.
Okay. All right. Any other that we want to make sure we're adding to? Thanks, Frank. Any others that we want to make sure we're adding to the list? We've got, I think, we've got 3 now. Usually we do 3 or 4. So if others come to mind, and usually we're supposed to get it to them in July. Sometimes later, depending on their process, but July or August we have done it later than that, but usually it's good for us to get it to them earlier. As for those of you who haven't gone through this process before, what happens is each commission is usually asked to give a priority 2 or 3, and then the county board decides, not only with Arlington but kind of Northern Virginia, what their priorities will be and what their recommendations will be for Richmond. So this is a iterative process that moves up, and so the sooner we start sending our requests in, probably the better to seed people thinking about the digital priorities that would be helpful from a state point of view. All right, thanks everybody. Next on the list is the March and April. Angela tried her very best to make sure we had May as well, but it was the transcript, something went pear-shaped, and so the transcript was not available. So you will pick up the May review of minutes in your August meeting, but we do have the March and April minutes. Are there any, let's take the March minutes first. Are there any additions, deletions, anything you want to recommend amending to the March minutes? Mike, if you've got a hand, is that an old hand or a new hand?
Oh, old hand, I'm sorry.
Old hand. No, that's all right. That's all right. Anything you want to, any changes to the March minutes? All right, I will entertain adopting the March minutes.
I motion that we adopt.
Thank you, John. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Someone second. Who second?
Second.
The other John.
It was the other John. Thank you, John. Oh, excellent. A John and a John. Excellent. That's easy. Thank you.
We're doing the double J on that one.
You're doing the double J. All right. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Here, I should make you all put up the little thumbs. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, March minutes are approved. All right, let's look at the April minutes. Any changes, deletions, additions, anything you want to correct in the record for the April minutes?
Do we have an answer on the question that we posed?
We do not at the moment. And Takis was intending to come this evening. I'm sure something has come up. So that will be postponed, John, for another meeting. Any additions, deletions in the minutes? Corrections? All right, hearing none, I will entertain adoption, a motion to adopt.
I so move.
To adopt.
Thank you, Phil. Who's seconding? Second?
Second.
Thank you, Frank. All right. All those in favor? Can you like thumbs up,
Aye.
eye, whatever?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. How about
Aye.
thank you. Oh, John's even got the hand. All right. Against? Any nays? Any abstentions? Ooh, Jackie, were you up? Was that a thumbs up to support or a thumbs up to abstain? Just want to check.
It was earlier from support. I just
Oh,
meant.
excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, so April minutes are approved. So we will put both of those up on the website. Thank you all. That's good. Got that done. And we have a couple more minutes, so I'm taking my last my last time as chair. Just wanted to thank you all. It has been it's been delightful, and yesterday it was very kind of Frank and Jack and the board, and you, for those of you who might not have seen my comments, one of the things I said was how strong this team is, and I certainly meant that, and it has been my privilege to serve on this commission. I've learned a lot, and you all really do. It is never boring. It's, and one of the things I said, there were two comments I just wanted to share. Oh, oh, Angela, aren't you sweet? And I did actually, Angela did get a shout out. I said that she really has gone above and beyond to support us. We really appreciate it. And Jack, as you know, you're always, as you already demonstrated on this meeting as well, you're always pushing the envelope, looking what's next around the corner. Just a couple things I wanted to mention, and one that I had not said yesterday, but certainly feel strongly about. You know, I said that, you know, many question the state of our democracy, and certainly this week, given what the hearings that we've been seeing, but the willingness of talented citizens, all of you, really who are willing to volunteer, really help the community, really gives me hope. And that is one of the things I have always been impressed with, is the caliber of the people who are willing to carve out time to commit to the community. And the other thing is that you know, what I've noticed in terms of democracy is the enemy of democracy is not conflict, but it's apathy and complacency. And, you know, I think we're really fortunate to have a dedicated team, you know, of professionals on this tech commission who really do spend time and effort asking questions and really looking at what are the best steps forward for the community and what's aligned with our values. So again, heartfelt thanks. I am very pleased that Frank and John have said yes to taking over. That gives me great comfort, because I know that they not only are very competent, but also their intentions are good in support of Arlington and the vision for Arlington to be not quite tech Disney, but to be that balance between between certainly having tech be available, but not intrusive. So it really has been my honor, and I thank all of you. And I do, as chair, I'm asking one more question of you. If you can take come off put your cameras on, and we'll do a team. Everybody come off camera. Yep, come on camera, and we'll do a team view, and I'll take a screenshot. So Angela,
And
can you
once
come
Mary
off view?
lets us know that the picture is done, I propose a Zoom standing ovation.
Okay, Angela, you're not coming off here. I could tell. There we go. Okay, all right, here we go. All right, let me see. There. Let's see. Let's see. There we go. Got it. And one more, just in case. There we go. All right. All right. We have the technology. I'll make sure and get this and save it so that we have it, because it's the only way in this time of in this time of COVID that we're able to take the group shot. But at least we got it. That's good.
And
thank you all.
Hearing that you got the shot, I'm saying.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the claps. Appreciate all the hard work, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. I'm most I think this is a lot of horsepower on this team. So all the best. And Jack, thank you. I appreciate you coming on my last time. That was we've journeyed together a long time. So thank you very much.
Mary, I wanted to say from the county's perspective, you've been fantastic, you and Frank, and you following that tradition, that long tradition. As I mentioned at the board meeting the other night, Tom Whipple, when I first came here, Mary, Mark, and Whipple, I can't tell you the number of days they had me down in the basement talking about, okay, here's what we need. What do you want to do? How can we achieve this? And Joe Pelton, I mean, the great, the scholarly man like him, over 50 to 100 books he's written, just top notch. And yourself and Frank have been just fantastic. You've gone out of your way to try to understand what we're trying to achieve in the county, what I was trying to achieve. And you took the time, you listened, we're going to miss that consideration. And you understood the role of the commission in terms of advising the board where necessary, but also understanding the needs of what we were trying to achieve. So for my personal thank you to you. I should tell you, I'm going to let you in on something else that we had happen the other day, and this is supposed to be embargoed, but we were awarded #1 digital county again for the year 2022.
Oh,
so,
bravo.
So this is 5 years in the last 7 that we've made it, and it's a credit to you and the team for all the help you've given us. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because I was trying to think when we got the Intelligent City. Remember, we were the top 7.
Yep.
That was like 2012, right?
Yeah.
Way back when? Yeah, 10 years ago. So that's
quite
wonderful.
Quite a record. So thank you, Mary, for all your help.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank all of you. I really appreciate it. And so we will with 2 minutes to go, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Someone.
Second.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
A second.
Another John.
All right. Thank you, John. Hey, we got the John and John thing going. Excellent. All right. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. All right, everybody. Have a good summer. And Frank and John will see you in August.
Or actually, yes, we'll see them in August, but we'll see you tomorrow. John and I will see you tomorrow with Takis.
That's right. And we will find out, he really did intend to be here tonight. So, and to address some of those questions. So